Welcome to Virtual Face-to-Face with Dr. Bruce Jarrell. I'm Alex Likowski, Executive Director of Media Relations. It's hard to find anyone who doesn't speak effusively about the 34th President of the University of Maryland College Park, Dr. Darryl J. Pines. Upon announcing that Pines would take the reins this month at the state's flagship public university, USM Chancellor Jay Perman cited a few of his successes as Dean of the A. James Clark School of Engineering. Outstanding student retention and graduation rates, goal-breaking philanthropic support, worldwide success of the solar decathlon team, and national recognition for the school's chapter of Engineers Without Borders. But more important to the future of the university, Perman noted the tremendous growth at the Clark School of minority faculty representation, even a doubling of the number of tenure-track women by faculty members. And Dr. Perman isn't alone in noting Pines' commitment to progressive transformation. University Senate Chair Dr. Pamela Lanford says, Pines brings to the presidency a deep understanding of our strengths, our challenges, and our resilience. During his time as dean, he has shown a strong commitment to diversity, leveraged opportunities for collaborative research, and demonstrated the impact of philanthropy on the student experience. Now, of course, that collaborative research he referenced is at the heart of UMB's continuing and growing relationship with our colleagues in College Park. What started as a spark of collaboration in 2012 was kindled by legislative action in 2016 into what we now know as the University of Maryland Strategic Partnership, Empowering the State, or more commonly just Empower. Over those 8 years, hundreds of collaborations between the two universities have been formed and funded, helping to grow Maryland's innovation economy, provide unique educational opportunities, and address some of the state's pressing needs. All told, some 650 research proposals have yielded $217 million in joint funding. About 24 programs and centers are advancing research in the use of virtual and augmented reality in medicine, opioid use disorders, human trafficking, brain health and human performance, and so much more. Right now, of course, the most pressing need for research is in regard to COVID-19, and the collaboration is working there, too. In May, Empower's UM Ventures awarded funds to 4 teams for research that will contribute to commercialization of evidence-based medical devices related to COVID-19, including devices for testing, personal protection, treatment, and prevention. And proposals are being reviewed right now to make multiple seed grant awards to fund COVID-19 research, not only in the medical arena, but also involving social, behavioral, policy, and legal research. So for more on this great strategic partnership and how it's faring in this very challenging year, please welcome University of Maryland College Park President Dr. Darryl Pines.
Thank you, Alex.
Before we go on, I should note this program is being recorded and will be posted on our COVID-19 recovery website, umaryland.edu/coronavirus. In a little while, you, the audience, will have a chance to ask questions. I hope you do. Just look for the chat button. It looks like a speech bubble down at the bottom of your screen, or in the upper right-hand corner if you're using a cell phone. Write your question there. And when the time comes, we'll call your name and unmute your mic. So all you have to do is just speak up. And if you're watching us on Facebook Live, we'll do our best to relay any questions that you may have. Now, with all that out of the way, here's your host, UMB Interim President, Dr. Bruce Jarrell.
Thank you, Alex, and it's a great pleasure to be here and to welcome those of you in the audience. Having President Pines here is a special treat for me. We've become close collaborators and friends. He's now been president for 23 days, I believe, and so that makes him an experienced president. So you're going to learn from someone who's actually walked the walk here. And so President Pines, thank you very much for being with us. I think it's always nice to start from the point of view of you've had a fascinating and successful career path. Who was it that stimulated you to walk down this path?
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you for having me, Bruce Jarrell, and thank you for having me, University of Maryland, Baltimore. How did I get here? Well, there are so many people that I can talk about who have affected my journey and my career, but probably the most seminal person has been former President C. Dan Mote. So when I was an 18-year-old freshman mechanical engineering student, Dan Mote was a mechanical engineering faculty member at UC Berkeley, and he was my academic advisor, that person who would approve your course requirements for the fall. And of course, at the time, I didn't know who he was. I was just a student trying to get his course requirements signed to go to the next class. And what happened during that time period as a freshman And as a sophomore, Dr. Moat invited me into his laboratory, and he showed me what he was working on. And that got me excited about research. And I didn't think much of it at the time, but then now fast forward, now some almost 40 years, that we would interact on and off, him as my mentor. He didn't even know it, he was my mentor. And then I would never think that in all my life that in 1998, he would arrive at the University of Maryland, College Park, as the president of our campus. And I'll tell you just one little quick funny story. When I was an assistant professor at the time, and I remember talking to the dean at the time, and I told the dean, I know the new president. And the dean at the time, Dean William Dessler, said, "You don't know the new president." I said, "No, I know the new president." And he said, "No, you don't know the new." I said, "Yes, I do." So we had a reception for him. And as you can imagine, all the senior faculty were in the front waiting to meet the new president, which was Dan Moat. I was in the back with my fellow assistant professors, sort of eating the snacks in the room, in the reception room. And Dan Moat passes all the senior leadership of the College of Engineering, and he comes right over to me. And he's like, "Hey, what kind of college is this?" And I said, "What are you doing? I'm not even tenured yet. You're embarrassing me." I said, "You got to go talk to the dean first, not me." He said, "Oh, I'll talk to him in a second." I said, "Well, what do you think about this school?" I said, "It's a great school." And so that's my sort of funny story about Dan Moat. And of course, later, fortunately, I would become president. And I think the only other funny story is that watch out how you treat your students, because they may become your bosses. So now I'm Dan Moat's boss because I'm the president of the University of Maryland.
Well, I hope that works out all okay. I'm sure it will. Before we get to Empower, I know you've said, and I agree, that there are two pandemics right now. One is about COVID and one is about social injustice. And during your tenure as Dean of the School of Engineering, you made great inroads into achieving more equity, diversity, and inclusion in the School of Engineering. Tell us a little bit about what you accomplished and how did you go about accomplishing that to be so successful?
So initially, thank you for that question, President Jarrell. We wanted to diversify our college in every way, at the student level, undergrad to graduate, and of course at the faculty level, which is always the most difficult. But we put it in our strategic plan first. So we did a first 5-year strategic plan when I first became dean, and we did a second one. And we wanted to put some teeth behind it. So we wanted to put some processes in place that really would keep all the departments and all the different committees accountable. So one of the processes that we put in place was that in every search, when you got to the finalist pool, you had to have a diverse candidate in the finalist pool. That was really important. So you go through a process, you go through the applications, and whoever is going to get interviewed, the interview would not go forward if a diverse person was from an underrepresented background, and especially as it relates to engineering, was not in the finalist pool. That's how we discovered some people and then put them on the faculty. That was one. Another incentive was the dean's office would offer at least 1/3 of the salary amount to any department that found an underrepresented diverse candidate or female candidate. That turned out to be a pretty good incentive to our departments, and we got a lot of support from the provost as well to kind of close the deal to be able to hire junior faculty. And then there was a couple of programs that the University of Maryland decided to put forward somewhere in about 2015, 2016. One was a senior postdoc program, which was a mentorship program. So if you could bring any diverse person from anywhere around the country, and if they did well in the 12 months that they were there for the postdoc, that they could be converted to a full-time employment, tenure track employment. We did a couple of conversions related to that of diverse, underrepresented minorities and women. And then finally, there was an opportunity hire program where if you found someone that was a senior faculty member in a strategic area of interest to your department or your college, you could make a case that they could be invited for a special interview. And if they did well, and if the dean had money, could convert them to a full-time employment tenure track at College Park. All of these measures led to a doubling of the number of African-American faculty in my college, the doubling of the number of Hispanic faculty members in my college, and a doubling of the number of women faculty in our college. And in the field of engineering and science broadly, STEM, it tends to have low numbers in computer science, low numbers in engineering, low numbers sometimes in physics and other disciplines of science. Not all disciplines of science have a dearth in these underrepresented categories. So that was our process.
What numbers did you finally achieve in terms of measurement, the way you measured?
Yeah, quantifiable numbers. So when I started, there's about 200 faculty in engineering tenured. I started with 16 female faculty members. We ended with about 39 when I just became president. In terms of African American faculty members, there were 4 faculty members when I started. There are now 10 that are there now. And similarly for Hispanics, about roughly the same numbers. There were 5 and now there's 11.
Phenomenal achievement. Yeah. Many of us would be envious of that, and the programs you've developed, we need to learn from for sure.
Yeah.
So Empower has been around actually even preceding 2011, but 2011 was when it sort of became official, and it's become this strategic partnership, and it's a partnership where UMB and UMCP have complementary skills. So like engineering and medicine, neither has both. Both need the other if we're going to be really successful in that area. And that's a science area, but there are many other areas, the law school, the School of Social Work, with psychology and criminology and things at College Park. So we've developed this set of relationships. And I guess what I would say is, in your mind and what you know about Empower so far, how would you describe Empower in terms of what we're trying to achieve?
Well, let me start from where you and I first met each other, because I think it's good for everyone to know this. I met Bruce Jarrell, who I didn't know at the time at all, and I was a chair of a department, and I attended a meeting that was held in Shady Grove at Rockville, at the University of Shady Grove, in the University of Maryland, what was at that time called the University of Maryland Biotechnology Institute, UMBI. And we were all there trying to solicit, if I can use that word, recruit, solicit faculty from that institute into our respective institutions in strategic areas of interest. And if the colleagues on the call had been there, it was like it was sort of this tension between our two institutions that like I had never seen before. I mean, like no one was, we were all on one side of the aisle and the other group was on the other side of the aisle. And here we are trying to recruit faculty. And then you could cut, it was just incredibly tense environment. And to think that where we are today in a wonderful collaborative environment with mutual respect of the leadership and the researchers and scholars at UMB, I even have a greater appreciation, to be honest with you, Dr. Jarrell, based on what has happened during this COVID-19 time. I have even a greater respect for colleagues at UMB because of the collaboration that I've seen during this time period. But yes, it became more solidified with the legislation and the Empower Agreement and then the Senate Bill 1052, which allowed for some additional funds to come through. And what it's really has allowed our groups, our various specialties, talent pools to kind of synergistically work along many thrusts, to work along thrusts along neuroscience, brain and behavior, obviously engineering and medicine from where I come from, but also the law school. We have a joint regulatory center with you on regulatory science with the School of Pharmacy. We have a new graduate collaboration fellowship program. Engineering's created a joint PhD in bioengineering program with UMB. We have, as Alex has mentioned, 600 projects that have gone on, millions of dollars of third-party funds that have been secured between our two institutions. And now that the fact that we're combined through a single VPR, I mean, we are a powerhouse in the United States and the world. And I think more is to come through this collaboration as a result of Empower and Senate Bill 1052. And it's amazing to see where we have come from that year, Dr. Jarrell, which was 2008, 2009 to 2020. And the fact that we just have so many things going on together. And we were literally at sort of like UFC fighters on one side of the ring and the other side of the ring, waiting for the bell to go off, which is ridiculous.
I'm going to eat you. No, you're going to eat me. No, I mean, it just was really, it was a stressful time, no doubt about it. But yet, I think clear heads prevailed and a lot of good things came out of that. So you used a term, I want to have you describe, used the term VPR. Our audience may not know what that is. And could you tell people about that and what's the value of that?
Yeah, so as many of you guys both know, that University of Maryland, Baltimore is a powerhouse in research, generating over $500 million or more. And University of Maryland College Park is a powerhouse in research, generating also over $500 million or more in expenditures and awards per year. We created, through the two presidents previous to us two, was a relationship to allow our two institutions to be represented by one vice president of research. In this case, it's Larry Likowski. And we did that because we wanted to be seen from our community, our peers, as one unit with a powerhouse of the professional schools in Baltimore and a powerhouse of some of the comprehensive colleges in College Park, and that our representation of our collective research impact could be much bigger than our individual institutions alone. So that allowed us to report our data together jointly to NSF, so that we now are over $1 billion in research awards and expenditures, which gives us a much stronger playing field to compete with our peers. And that is done under one umbrella, one vice president of research that serves both institutions administratively and collaboratively.
And she's done a wonderful job of pulling things together to understanding both organizations. I believe she's a graduate of both of our organizations.
She is.
So she knows us well. And of course, that's going to change our ranking very significantly with the National Science Foundation. And we won't know the final number until sometime in November, but I suspect it'll be in the top 15 research universities in the country. That's pretty rare company, to say the least. So Empower has been trying to really bite off big problems that require complex solutions. And what do you see as a big one on the horizon that we can begin to address, a big problem? That's what you and I are, engineers. We like to have problems to find so we can find a solution. So what would be on your radar screen here?
Well, President Jarrell, we agree. We love big problems as engineers. And I like to say that we are in a time period where these are truly grand challenges of our time. And there are many. And clearly front and center is this virus, which is called COVID-19. And as we have all thought about this, and for the first time, I want everybody to imagine that never before in the last 100 years of their existence on the planet, that one thing has affected every human being on the planet roughly about the same time in this given year of 2020. No one can ever say that has ever happened to them ever in their life, that it has just shut down their normal livelihood and affected the economy across the world in such a way. So clearly, this is a global grand challenge. And one of the things that Dr. Jarrell and I have always thought about and talked about is that this is a great opportunity. This nexus of what is happening to us now is an opportunity for us to work together on figuring out what just happened to us. For example, we found out in the United States that we were simply not prepared for this pandemic, just simply not prepared from the science perspective, not prepared to having a vaccine ready for this kind of a virus. And we knew about SARS in 2006, not like we didn't know about it, we just didn't do the work. We were not prepared from a PPE perspective, even though we have a national stockpile. That national stockpile was depleted in literally a month. So there's an opportunity for UMB and UMCP to work together in what we're calling maybe an Institute on Pandemic Preparedness, or just an Institute on Pandemics. But there's an opportunity to bring our synergies together and do this across the United States and across this region, because we're in Maryland, where a lot of great things happen along this thrust anyway, to really be leaders for the nation, but also for the world through such an institute. So I think that's one way where there's a grand challenge. And I would say that because of the second pandemic, which is a pandemic on social unrest and police violence and police brutality, well, this is really another interesting area for us to work on, which I know there's a lot of great work going on at UMB in the School of Law and Social Work and a lot of other places, but it's across multiple threads. We know that we could work across policing, which is one area. We could work across racism, which is another area. We could work across health disparities that we saw under COVID-19, but it gets exacerbated even when there's these impoverished populations who don't have access to good health care. So a center on social justice that deals with racism, that deals with policing, we have that capability to not only do the scholarly work and the academic work, but to translate it into practice as well. So I'm excited about that opportunity as well. So both of those two areas seem really fruitful for us to get into.
Great. So I just want to remind the audience that we're looking forward to your questions. So please put them in the chat box so that we can ask President Pines these questions. So explain to me, I understand UMB's expertise when it comes to infectious diseases and vaccine development. So explain for those in the audience, what's the power that College Park brings to that discussion?
So, let me just speak towards, I think there's two ways in which I think College Park speaks to that discussion. So one, let's talk about the short-term solutions. So COVID-19 and doing the research, so many of us stayed alive doing the research at our institutions, and these were the only elements that were given permission to do research or to do application work. And so in the short term, our faculty on our campus were doing all kinds of things. I'll give you a couple of examples. One is simple as, make an additional hand sanitizer because it ran out in the region. First responders were calling the University of Maryland saying, can you produce hand sanitizer? So we created, 10,000 bottles of hand sanitizer from chemical engineers who were doing that just as a service to the local first responders, the police departments, the firefighter departments. So that's a short-term solution. But then in the long term, we had our other engineering faculty members were working on new N95 masks that are conformal to your face that have better filters than the existing ones that would be better against taking on this virus and not letting it infiltrate into your breathing respiratory system. We had also some engineers build essentially a test apparatus that would enable those nurse externs who were doing the testing to be able to do it in a much safer environment and get the nasal swab so that they would not themselves be infected. So there were many biomedical devices and systems that were being worked on by engineering faculty here at College Park. And then in addition, in our School of Public Health, we've had faculty study the air conditioning systems and what we should be doing with ventilation and circulation of the air patterns to reduce the likelihood that there would be transmission inside of internal areas like residence halls or in our classrooms where the air might be stagnated. So this is the work of some of our colleagues who are in the School of Public Health.
Yeah, and so you had a great application in one of your groups where you could track people and know how well they were socially distancing. That one always amazed me. How did that work?
So that was our transportation engineers who, fortunately, they had been collecting this kind of data, which is basically all of us have cell phones. And believe it or not, all of that anonymized cell phone data is available through multiple providers. And so they had gotten the databases for that in real time, but they had been using it for purely traffic reasons. Is there a congestion here on I-95? Is there congestion on the Baltimore Beltway? Is there congestion on the Washington Capitol Beltway? And then what they realized in this crisis that they could actually monitor whether states, individuals, counties, cities were abiding by the governor's stay-at-home orders. And they could get it as down to the granularity of a zip code. And it was fascinating because they actually uncovered a problem in the state of Maryland. So where the hot spots in the state of Maryland were Prince George's County, Baltimore City, there was another hotspot that emerged in terms of coronavirus cases in the state of Maryland. It was in Baltimore County, but it didn't make any sense to people. But what had happened was tracking people's cell phone data, they discovered that there were some folks in Maryland that made these multiple trips to New York City. And they would make this trip like literally every day and come back to the same zip code area. And they were bringing back the virus from New York City to this one area in Baltimore County. And that's how it happened. But it was just by tracking cell phone usage and cell phone movement that they get down to a granularity of a few meters, which is pretty impressive.
That's an amazing story. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, pretty good.
So in terms of the other pandemic, that of social injustice, et cetera, one of the things we've had in power for some time is what's called Scholars. Scholars is a group of students at one campus who spends the summer at the other campus learning about a particular topic. This year we've done something special. and that is that we have 7 students from UMB and an 8th from the School of Public Health at College Park spending the summer with Dr. Cynthia Bauer looking at health literacy and social determinants of health. And then they'll carry that forward to a white paper toward the end of this coming academic year to make recommendations to us about how we should be approaching this particular health inequity among our population. So I'm really enthusiastic about seeing that, and I know you've gotten involved with that and with Professor Bauer. So I want to thank you for that as well.
Oh, you're welcome. You're absolutely welcome.
So Alex, I see you had one question there. Why don't you go ahead and ask that question, and then we'll keep going.
Okay, well, we do have a question from Beverly Polk. Beverly, I'm going to open your mic. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
I was wondering if you've had some partnership attempts that didn't work very well, but provided helpful lessons.
With UMB and College Park?
Yes, and just in your career, some lessons that we all could share.
You know, I never focus on the negative. That's interesting.
Well,
I have to
the
think hard
lessons
about
learned
it.
are not negative.
That's true. That's true. We've had, well, I don't want to, we've had some partnerships with some universities that did not go well, which were big partnerships that did not go well. But I think the lessons, so I'll talk about one. We had a partnership overseas with Shanghai Jiao Tong University. And it was a partnership in which their students were supposed to come to College Park in engineering, and our students were supposed to go to Shanghai Jiao Tong in Shanghai and be mutually educated. And what would happen is their students would come over here and be taught in English. Our faculty would go over there and teach their students in English. And what happened was we were doing in good faith our side, but they didn't deliver on their side. And partly because we didn't actually get the details of the financing in writing. We knew what we were going to fund, but on their side, we didn't have them do it likewise and get approval on their side to support the retribution of doing the same thing in country here in the US. So it didn't go well. We did it for a couple of years, and then we realized they're not going to fund their side. But it's partly because we didn't get it in writing. They're a great school. We thought it was a great partnership, and we ended up partnering with another school in China called Peking University in Beijing, which actually worked out a little bit better.
But I would add to that discussion the following. If I've learned a lesson, it's you can't have a joint program on goodwill. You have to have a joint program on money. And as much as money, you can say whatever you want to think about it. If there's not money on the table to devote to joint programs, the incentive is not there to do that. So it takes a lot of money, and it takes a commitment to use that money wisely to develop these many programs. And so when you think about Empower, part of the success has been some people have stuck with it to say this is important, but part of it is that the legislature in its wisdom saw to invest money in this where the money could only be used for the partnership. It didn't get lost in the university. It stayed right in the front of the eyes of the presidents and the steering council to say, this money is committed to this purpose, that of partnership and collaboration. And I think that is still a major secret to this program. Without it, I don't think we would be nearly as far along as we are. With it, it's given us tremendous ability to make things happen. And yet those things that have happened have largely been from the grassroots, not just from a president or a dean down. It's come from people, faculty, and in some cases, student ideas. So money seems to be an important part to that. And as President Pines just said, that was what broke down in that first relationship. It was the details about the money, wasn't it? So
absolutely.
So
no, I agree. And I just also want to say there was a prelude to Empower where we had a seed program.
we did.
And that was also important. It wasn't a lot of money, but it did lead to really strong collaborations in a number of areas. In fact, it led to the Regulatory Science Center that's jointly between our two campuses, out of pharmacy and out of engineering. And it started with a little seed grant. that two researchers from School of Pharmacy and School of Engineering got together and turned it into something bigger, a bigger center. And so I agree with President Jarrell. You have to have money, even if it's small money. In that case, that was seed money that precipitated the larger pools of money from Empower. Now, Empower has allowed us to exponentially grow in our collaborations and to really do impactful work. But there's nothing like incentive, which is money, to get people to work together.
Yeah, and I remember that seed grant program. Mel Bernstein and Jim Hughes and one or two other people and I sat in a room and dreamed that one up. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a good one, though.
Yeah. Alex, you got a second question?
Well, I've got more than that. They're starting to heat up now. It just has to get, the pump has to get primed, Going back to issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, we have this anonymous question. Often people who come from underrepresented populations get slower traction in being promoted to solid leadership positions. So it's not just a question of hiring, but it's promotion and how they gain more responsibility. Do you see that as an issue, and what's the reason for that, and what do you think the solution is, or what are some solutions?
So I think all of our universities, and I don't know how it is at UMB, suffer from what I would call leadership development programs across all races, ethnicities, groups. And so at College Park, for many, many years, we didn't have sort of a succession kind of planning like you have in major corporations. And we started creating a leadership development program for our faculty. Those obviously were mostly full professors. And so that now creates a pipeline. And of course, we've created a very diverse pool of fellows who are part of that program. So it's a lot different than what it was before. But generally, I think a person who wants to be in leadership or wants to get some knowledge of how the administration works often does that by volunteering to do different assignments within a department. And then they start doing it at a college level. Then they might do it at a campus level. And when you do these extracurricular activities beyond your normal scholarly work and academic work, you tend to develop relationships. And most administrative positions, as you move up the food chain, is all about your relationships with the people that you're interacting with who are either above you or below you. And then they think highly of you to think that you could take the next position in the lineage of academic leadership. But it comes from building these relationships through multiple committees. And so we've now created a fellowship leadership program, which we call the Academic Leadership Fellows Program. And essentially, we take about 80 people each year. They go through a whole year of training, and then they're ready to be new department chairs or to be associate deans or down the road assistant deans. And I think it comes from really thinking deeply about what do we think the future is going to be for our future leaders. And we have to grow our own future leaders in our programming for our campuses. So I think that we can do it better. I agree in terms of diversity. And I think the kind of programs that we created at College Park will be helpful towards that end.
That program is 80 faculty per year.
Yep.
And how intense is it?
It meets, so I've been one of the instructors, so it meets once a month for 9 months and for 2 hours during each of the sessions. And for example, we go over things related to the complexity of the budget, how to understand the budget. Most faculty don't understand the budget, especially even within their own department, let alone the campus budget. That's one of them. We talk about doing diversity training. We talk about how to set up search committees for attracting underrepresented minorities. We talk about complex decision making. We just go through a whole bunch of role setting to make sure that people can handle complex situations that they're going to find themselves in their units as a leader. We bring in negotiators. How do you negotiate a salary with faculty? How do you do that? So a lot of things is just training that you don't normally get as a normal academic. And we bring that in terms of this Leadership Fellows program.
Great. Alex, another question.
Well, we have this follow-up from Elisa Medina. Elisa, go ahead.
Hi there. Just a follow-up to that. That program sounds really great. Do you have anything similar for staff?
Yes, we do. So similarly for staff, we have another Leadership Fellows. I don't run that Leadership Fellows program, but there's a bunch of similar kinds of training modules that they go through for the same kind of sort of, advancement of their careers up the food chain to become, the highest position that I'm aware of in our university is the chief of staff, which is my chief of staff. It's the highest position that I think a staff member can take at our institution, and the particular chief of staff that I have, he came up all the way through the ranks. Imagine from a non-exempt employee to an exempt employee to probably, the right hand of the president. And that's Michelle Eastman. President Jarrell knows her well. She's had a 35 plus year career at Maryland, and she started as a non-exempt staff person.
And she's great to work with, of course.
She really is, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And at UMB, we have a fairly now developed president's development program. It involves people at the lower level of the vice president and assistant dean level, with the idea that they learn all there is to know about administration, decision making, thinking strategically, being a leader. And of course, that builds capacity within your institution so that you can have a succession plan, et cetera. So that's having that depth. And by the way, having that depth during a period of COVID has been extremely important to have. So, Alex, you got another one?
Sure. We're going to change directions with Everly Brown. Everly, go ahead.
Hi, President Jarrell and President Pines. Just to tack on to the last question before I ask mine, I would say that no matter how long you've been I'm from UMB, been there. When I first started, there was no emerging leaders program and no umbrella coaching program. And I'd say even though you've been there almost 20 years like me, those are still valuable programs. So don't think it's not for you. Don't think it's only for people who've been there 1 to 5 years. I still met a great cohort of women at the umbrella group, and I'm planning on going to apply for the emerging power leaders group. But anyway, my question is, are there other USM universities that UMB and College Park are partnering with during this time? And what are those initiatives?
Great question. Dr. Jarrell and I sit on a USM task force for COVID-19. And that task force has essentially did a couple of things. I'll just highlight just a couple of them. So one of them is this concept that we talked about earlier, is this Institute on Pandemic Preparedness. It has actually come under a larger umbrella in terms of discussion about multiple schools in the system contributing to this potential initiative. So not only just the universities, but we've also brought in some of the government laboratories and some of the private entities that do biotechnology, bioscience research in the state of Maryland to be also potential future partners. So that's one area in which we're working. Then another area in which we are collaborating, as it relates again to this task force on COVID-19, is that we just did a mobile app RFP from the University System of Maryland to get our students from all around the system. I mean, from Towson, from UMES, from UMB, from UMD, from everywhere, UMBC, to partner and submit their best ideas to win money to develop a mobile app that will be successful during this time period of COVID-19 to help us as universities move forward in either contact tracing or monitoring your symptoms and your temperature. And this has just been recently awarded across these 4 or 5 different institutions. So that, again, came out of a collaboration, kind of sort of orchestrated at the University System of Maryland level, in which President Jarrell and I are on the same task force.
Right. And Everly, good question. I would remind you from the UMB point of view that we have always had a close relationship with UMBC and President Hrabowski in research programs. And in fact, there's several grants where all 3 of us participate in that particular grant, one on minority graduate student education. And then there's been a lot of associations pre-COVID and post-COVID with all of the other USM institutions and some outside the institution. And then, of course, lastly, I'd be remiss not to include Johns Hopkins. We have a lot of relationships with them as well, and I'm sure, Darryl, you do at College Park as well. They're a very valuable partner. So I think although you may see us as independent, there is a weave across our universities where interactions occur, and they're very productive interactions at times. So thanks for that question. Alex, got another?
I want to add something first before we go on, and that is that, sometimes those collaborations are not what you would expect. We have a collaboration with College Park and UMES. It's called the Agriculture Law Education Initiative, and you wouldn't immediately think of it, but there's so much that is needed to run a successful agriculture business. It involves, regulation and the turning over of assets as generations advance. I mean, there are many, many issues. So yeah, we have lots of different collaborations. We have Terry Sosha, who is here with the next question. Terry, go ahead.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm with AHEC West in Cumberland, and I've coordinated interprofessional geriatrics projects for University System of Maryland students. And so we draw from across the state very often, and I've been repeatedly impressed. Students from Frostburg State, Towson, Coppin, Bowie, Salisbury, UMES, and their basic ability to just ask good questions while working on a team that's interacting with an older adult. And my sense is that sometimes the educational opportunities in Maryland are stratified too early in the student's education. So I'm happy to hear that there's discussion to expand the collaboration to the state universities, because there are just some really wonderfully talented students there that I don't think their skills and brilliance has been recognized yet. So I would be interested in hearing more about that pathway for additional students.
I'll let President Pine start, and then I'll add to it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think, as I stated just a little bit earlier, COVID-19 has actually enabled all the system presidents and faculty from around the system to work more closely together to come up with common solutions that affect all of us. And in so doing, has allowed us to have a greater appreciation for the skills and depth of skills across the entire university system of Maryland, from Frostburg State to Salisbury, to UMES, to UMBC, to everywhere, to UMGC. I mean, one of the partnerships that we have that I didn't mention is a significant partnership, but it's not led by UMB, it's not led by UMCP, it's led actually by UMBC on cybersecurity. And it involves UMGC in global training of cybersecurity certified experts. And there's also associated with the cybersecurity part is a incubator co-located at UMBC. And we're a partner, College Park is a partner with UMBC, but they are the lead entity because of their skill sets as it relates to that particular topic. So I agree with you, there are many, many collaborations in which our students, our diversified suite of students from across the system schools have expertise and talent to offer the citizens of the state of Maryland, and it's just going to grow with these collaborations.
Yeah, and I think what I would add to that is that there are many examples pre-COVID too. All of us have focused on that. I'll give you one example where we stood up a statewide physician assistant program where we work with all the programs in the state, the one at Frostburg, the one at UMES, the one here, and the one at Towson, to make those programs on an even footing so that all of their students will have a good chance of graduating and becoming successful practitioners. And I know there are other examples like that. There are also examples with a group that you didn't mention, and that's the community colleges. And at universities at Shady Grove, there is a very rich collaboration with the students of Montgomery College to get those students into a four-year degree and beyond. We have a very strong relationship with Anne Arundel Community College. And I got to think College Park would say every community college, maybe.
Exactly, everyone.
So, pretty much everyone. So, yeah. And we have that in nursing with every nursing associate's degree program. We now have a linkage with our School of Nursing. So a lot of richness going on there. Alex, Want to move on?
Yep, certainly. We have a question from our Facebook Live audience. Just the other day, earlier this week, the Maryland Technology Development Corporation, often referred to as TEDCO, appointed Troy LeMail Stovall as the new CEO and executive director. How do the universities work with TEDCO? What's the relationship like, and what would they like to see the new CEO work with them on?
So from my perspective, I'll just speak. We've worked over years. Of course, I was Dean of Engineering, and lots of devices and products and ideas come out of engineering that require the next level of funding to take them to a level of maturity that actually where businesses can be self-sustaining. TEDCO is that mechanism to do it. That's one mechanism in the state that provides that sort of seed money at about 100K, 75, 100K level that has an idea that maybe it started with 10K, and then they needed additional money to mature the idea and take it to the next level. So I would say to Mr. Stovall that it'd be great if he could expand his interactions with universities to help translate some of our research ideas into practice and to get them over what that is called that valley of death so that they can maybe be sustainable with selling actual real products that can generate revenue. More monies for those programs for UMB, UMBC, UMD, and other schools would be great to get us through that valley of death and get us to more sustainable businesses that employ more people in the state of Maryland.
And I would simply add that the universities are chock full of bright minds and ideas, including our students. And of course, taking advantage of that from a TEDCO point of view and understanding what's here and what to tap into would be very important. I want to get to one question I want President Pines to comment on. Sort of between questions here is Empower has invested very significantly at the IBBR program in Rockville. Could you make just a few comments about IBBR and what its capabilities are and the relationship with NIST?
Maybe do you want to say what IBDR is before we go any farther? Everyone doesn't know what it stands for.
I agree.
Okay, so do you want to go, Bruce, and say what it is?
Well, it's a research institute for biomedical and I can never remember what the second B is, but for biomedical.
Biotechnology and biomedical. I know that. I don't know which one's first. Right.
It's really a freestanding institution, jointly managed with College Park as the lead and UMB as the secondary.
It also involves the National Institutes of Standards and Technology.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Just get that out of the way. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, no problem. So the precursor to IBBR was the University of Maryland Biotechnology Institute, and that was collapsed through an agreement from the system, chancellor at that time. And this was the entity that emerged out of the partnership between, like you said, NIST, UMB, and UMCP. And it's an opportunity for our faculty to work in a high quality environment along threads of science and measurement research that have a national impact and more than a national impact. So some of the areas of interest include, we have unique instrumentation, a cryo-EM is there for characterization and for therapeutic development, new therapies. So it's super exciting to know that it exists. It's something that allows NIST to do some of the standards and measurement work as related to the instruments that we have there, and some of our faculty to do characterization, but also to think about new therapies in this wonderful field of structural biology. That's one area in which there's a strength there. There's a strength there also in the area of virology. And of course, we are all interested in understanding viruses now more than ever before. And so that could become a nexus of folks really working along the science behind the virus and how it evolves and how we can mitigate it through therapies and other measures. So that's a second area. And then there's some other areas that we have out there that are science related that are growing as well. So it's this collaboration where there are faculty from UMB, from UMCP, and our colleagues at NIST co-located at Shady Grove in the Institute doing great work on behalf of the nation in these really critical areas. So it's an exciting opportunity for us to raise the bar and maybe really focus on the work that's related to virology and new vaccines as we're in this COVID-19 environment.
Great, thank you. I wanted to make sure we let people know about that. Alex, you got another question?
Well, I just have one more right now, and maybe someone else will chime up in a moment, but a shy viewer is noticing a little red book on the corner of your desk, Dr. Pines, that's titled Being Lucky. And she really wants to know what that's all about. Since it's on your desk, it must be important.
So a lot of folks have given me presidential books to read. So this is actually the president of a university in Illinois, and it's called Indiana. It's under Indiana University Press. And one of my colleagues who's at Rose-Hulman, if you know Rose-Hulman, was the president at Rose-Hulman. And he said, you need to read this book before you become president. So that's about being lucky. Maybe I should send it to President Jarrell as well.
Yeah, well, yes, that's a good idea. I need to be lucky. I can tell
I
you
need to
that.
know how to be lucky, that's for sure.
Yes, exactly. I know there's one burning question that I and others have, and that is, today is the 23rd of July. Your classes start in August the 31st.
31st.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're going to do.
So yes, obviously all of us have been working towards at UMB, at everywhere in the system schools, toward what we are calling a return to campus plan or strategy. I mean, essentially we've all been working the entire summer to mitigate the risks and to make sure that the safety and health of every human being on our campus is the highest priority. So in that regards, as we have de-densified our campus, so we're going to have about 20% of our courses in person and about 80% obviously online, and a mixture of the 20% in person is a blended hybrid style of instruction. Well, what we've done is we prioritize that the freshman class will have the highest priority, in which they will essentially get a lot of classes that are in person. And we're trying to make sure that they have a great first year experience. And the reason why is because when they were high school seniors, essentially they had a terrible closing senior year. Virtual graduations, they went online in March, just like all of us did. So we're trying to make sure that their experiences are really good. Now, how are we going to keep them safe? Well, we have de-densified our entire campus. So let me first talk about the residence halls. So we've just got our recent numbers in. We have a capacity to have about 9,600 students on campus. We're going to have about 4,400 students roughly on campus. So there'll be no double suites, there'll be no triple suites, and no quadruple suites. There'll be only single person suites and single person rooms or units in our dormitory environment, our residence hall environment. That's really important to reduce the transmission of the disease. We're going to ask every student prior to coming to campus to, first of all, do some training about what they're going to need to do to keep themselves safe. And one of them is obviously to wear facial covering. Number two, to maintain social distancing. Number three is to maintain personal hygiene, cleaning their hands, washing their hands done daily multiple times per day, or hand sanitizer. And then agree to not to be in large groups of greater than 10 unless they're part of some classroom environment that's being allowed up to about 25 with their facial coverings on and socially distant. And then what we're trying to do to prevent them from having these young people large parties is to have lots of events for them on campus in our broad environment, which is a very expansive campus here at College Park, so that they will have wonderful outside events, at least during the months of September and October, de-densified, so they have a wonderful college experience. So these are the challenges that we faced to bring undergraduates and graduate students back to our campus. And of course, all the work related to the signage, the upgrading of the HVAC system, the circulation of the ventilation to make sure that the transmission of the air is not stagnant. So we're doing a lot of things technically, including one of the final areas is environmental monitoring, looking at the summer to look at the wastewater effluent and to look at the ventilation system and particles in the air to see if we can do a better job of preventive measures or like early warning detection of whether the virus is in these different environments.
And you've got sports coming up too, don't you?
Sports, yes.
I was going to say, one of my classmates was a fellow you may have heard of named Boomer Esiason, and I think he would want to know the answer. Like, how are we going to have sports? They're practicing, right?
Yes. So they're doing individual training, socially distanced practicing for the football players and other sports. I think this will be one of the biggest decisions that we will make going into the fall. As you notice in the professional leagues, they've gone into a bubble, quote unquote bubble, where they can control the environment and control the transmission of the disease and keep others out of that bubble while they still continue their sport professionally with no audience. Colleges are a little bit different. Universities are a little bit different. For the summer, we've been able to isolate our student athletes in a bubble, but going into the fall, there'll be all these other people around. So one of the big decisions we have going forward with our Big Ten fellow presidents and our Big Ten athletic directors and the commissioner is, will we do fall sports? Right now, the messaging is we are going to do fall sports, but I think the big decisions will happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And it'll depend on where all the states in the United States are with the number of cases in the coronavirus cases throughout the states and in the areas where the universities are located. So that's the challenge we all have. We all want to have sports, of course, but one thing I will say, it is doubtful that we'll have significant fans in the stadiums for sure. I can just assure you that that's probably not going to happen. But you'll be able to see it on television if we have fall sports, especially football.
It'll really look different, and I'm sure it'll feel different as a player too.
I'm sure. No people in stands.
Right.
Yeah.
Alex, you got any other questions?
No, it's a quiet audience. They're taking it all in right now.
Quiet audience.
Yeah, I asked Adrian Arthur, our executive director of Empower. She said maybe we should hear from the steering council members who are in the audience.
Well, they've got 3 minutes. It's pretty tight. It's pretty tight. I think this has been a wonderful hour. I want to thank President Pines for giving us his time. I hope we get to do this again. It'll certainly be fun as you develop your ideas and as we work closer together on Empower. I'm sure some great things will come out of that. We'll have a lot to talk about. And I think that'll be an exciting thing to do. And who knows when COVID is going to end. So we may be online for a long time, my friend.
Let's hope not.
Well,
thank you, President Jarrell. I also want to say to your community that, President Jarrell has been a great partner even before I became president. I just want to, if the folks don't know at UMB what the team at UMB has been doing on behalf of the entire system, I just want to share those thoughts with you and President Jarrell's leadership. So as you know, the University of Maryland Baltimore School of Medicine, the Institute for Genomics, has been the key entity in the state of Maryland, expanding the testing capability and capacity for the state. But while they've been doing that for the state, they've been working with all of the system schools to help them be able to test on their own campuses. Without the School of Medicine and the Institute for Genomics, this would not be possible. So President Jarrell, I want to thank you for your leadership, your incredible team of people. And I can go through countless number of names. They know who they are. They're in the Institute of Genomics. They know who they are. They have worked closely with our folks, UMBC, Towson, and I'm telling everyone on this call that essentially the leadership of President Jarrell, the expertise of the faculty and the staff at UMB to pull this off on behalf of the state and the University System of Maryland partner institutions is just unbelievable. And we're all grateful for President Jarrell's leadership and for the entire team's expertise in making this possible. We are grateful for making us safe. And it's really a large part of your leadership, President Jarrell, and I'm grateful for that.
Thank you. For the audience, I didn't pay him to say that.
He didn't. I get nothing for that.
It's nice to hear, but it's been a wonderful partnership, and we've got lots more to do together. So I want to thank the audience, thank President Pines. I hope you're lucky, as it says on your desk there, being lucky, and I look forward to the partnership. So thank you very much, and thank you all.
All right, take care now.